Hello, my friends. Welcome back to another episode of Legacy Farmer, the podcast. This is your host, JC Young, and today's topic of discussion is this: passed down problems. So today I'm joined once again by Andy, who is one of our main team members here inside of Legacy Farmer. And as I told you guys on the last episode here, when we kind of introduced him, he does a lot of the fulfillment side of Legacy Farmer and has regular discussions on a daily basis with one of our 300 plus members from all across the U.S. inside of Legacy Farmer. And today's discussion, what we really wanted to go over was just this whole concept around passed down problems. Now, Andy had a conversation with one of our members yesterday. And this member is really going through a challenging time right now because they're in the process of taking over the farm operation from the prior generation, aka his dad. And ultimately, when you inherit the farm operation, you also inherit all of the bad decisions and problems from the prior generation as well. So, Andy, I'll kind of let you take it from there and explain a little bit about the story, and we'll see where it goes.
So we had a member reach out yesterday, and I could tell right away, there's a lot when we got on that call. There's a lot of things that had been going on, and so we dug into his conversation around, this feeling that now that he's stepping into the next generation and taking on more responsibility, he's also starting to figure out that there's a lot of problems that are being passed down as well. And so as we dove into this conversation, the unfortunate thing is that the generation before you, if they haven't gone through that process, not going through the process of figuring out the business side of things, or have made bad decision and not having any awareness of the consequences of it, it's the next generation that gets dealt with those problems and they have to solve them. Yeah. And this member was feeling that fire yesterday.
Well, so talk a little bit about the weight that the member felt, because I think we do not give the amount of weight and stress that the younger generation is going to feel. We don't give it kind of the merit that it deserves. So talk a little bit about the weight that he was feeling.
The weight was real, because not only was, as the business owner and the guy who's going to be now responsible for taking on this next generation and pass it on, hopefully, to the next generation, the whole goal of it. And not only that, but taking care of family, wife and kids at home, all of that pressure. And then you add the bank, and the bank is the guy who he was starting to feel the pressure from. Yep. Asking questions around the books. This member shared things have gotten to the point where now the bank is now having to keep tabs on them on a monthly basis. Like a monthly basis. Think about that. Most guys, you're running around, you have once a year, you're getting an operating loan, and you can go out and do what you normally really want to do. But this situation has turned corners here. And now where not only is he facing trying to run the business, but he's got the banker on his back as well. That's putting pressure on him.
Yep, absolutely. And I think about this too, man, with the younger generation coming back. So like, just so everybody listen to this member is 30 years old. Right. So everybody kind of has this plan coming out of high school and college that they want to go back to the farm and they want to take it over. And we come back as visionaries. Like, let's not sugarcoat it. We have big visions of what we want to build and what we want to become and things like that. And this member had the same thing. But the reality is when he starts jumping into this operation, he commits, he moves his wife, his family, they commit to the operation. They move out to the farm and then come to find out that they're inheriting not just an operation, but a shit show of problems, challenges, and bad decisions that were made 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago that this member now has to deal with. And again, it knocks the energy out of people, because when you come back and you have this massive vision, you want to go build this thing. And then all of a sudden you realize, crap, I got 3 to 5 years of solving these problems that were made by people when I wasn't even involved. And now I have a massive learning curve here of finances, entity structure, legacy planning, banking, accounting, tax strategy. I have a massive learning curve here because the prior generation, one, they either didn't face it, they made the decision not to face it, or they made the decision to not learn about it or educate themselves at all.
And guys, this member's operation is not a small operation either. I mean, this is a $10.5 million operation.
Yeah.
Like, we're dealing with big numbers here. And so the leverage that this member has, what we call the client leverage at the bank, is dealing with farmer metrics and keeping track of your position as it sits with the bank. It's over 4 million. So to walk into the bank and to get financing with the leverage that they have and the collateral that they have is no problem. However, the problem is with the cash flow, with the debt, the current debt that they have. It's hard to cash flow, and they are not cash flowing. They've lost money the past 3-4 years.
Yeah. And the banks guys, this is kind of a a tricky situation, because a lot of people, they come in and they look at their balance sheet, right? A lot of farmers or ranchers, they're basing how well they're doing based off of what their net worth says, right? Because that's an easy number to focus on, especially when everything is appreciating, kind of like what we're experiencing right now. Easy just to focus on appreciation and not cash flow, right? But here's the deal though. The banks, even the banks during this time, back in 2012, 2013, when I was in the bank started focusing just on appreciation as well. Appreciation of assets, net worth is big. We have great collateral. Yeah, let's loan this guy money. And the thing is, guys, is when it comes to how banks are going to make decisions, they're making it based off of one, collateral, but two, cash flow. And back in that time, like, we just started avoiding cash flow. We just started avoiding it because it was so good and we knew everybody was making money. It didn't really matter. Just loan whatever you want. Not understanding and not really going out and doing projections and pricing out this loan that we're about to make when prices are actually bad. And that's what we talk a lot about with our members, and doing projections and making sure our cash flow is in places like, okay, if you're looking at making this purchase, yes, at today's prices, it might work. Why don't you price it out on what prices were 2 years ago and see if it works? And the thing is, that changes the entire dynamic around the operation. But Andy, let's get a little bit more focused here, back on point. How do you feel like, this type of situation, you come back, you're 30 years old, you're married, got a couple kids, you sacrifice and dedicate your life to the farm operation. You move your family back out there, and then you find out that you're inheriting this shit show of problems. What type of relationship do you think you have with your father now at that point?
It gets really heated. It gets very heated, because not only are you experiencing the anger and frustration from the problem that hasn't been solved, but the person who created that problem is your father. Mm-hmm. And that's the person you are seeing on a day-to-day basis. So every time you see him, you are dealt with the anger that is present.
Yep.
And that's a very hard relationship to continue with.
And guys, what we talked about too on this morning's call when we were going over this hot seat with this member, was the simple fact of just how valuable Legacy Farmer is for these guys. Because in all this, in everything we do in Legacy Farmer, we're focusing on providing all the tools and systems and trainings across personal challenges and how to handle the personal side of the farm operation, which we all know exist, but primarily to the business side, right? And knowing the numbers, simplifying things so that if I'm running a big $10 million operation, I have a system in place called Farmer Metrics that allows me to monitor where I'm at on a day-to-day basis if I want to, so that I'm making methodical, logical decisions, not based off of emotion, right? And so we were talking about this on today's calls, like, man, looking at your situation here, I get that your dad made some bad decisions, put you guys in this type position. But what we have today in Legacy Farmer, 300 plus members, all the tools and resources, and then we have the network of individuals willing to actually openly talk about finances, problems they faced, business problems, family problems, how they overcame them, and everything. We built a solid network. Your dad didn't have that 30 years ago, right? So the dynamics have changed there. How different, Andy, do you think their operation would have been if his dad would have had what we've built here 30 years ago?
I can promise you the decisions that he would have made would have not had the effect that they do right now, the negative effects, because he would have been he wouldn't have made that bad decision. He wouldn't have bought that piece of ground at a time that maybe a guy couldn't afford it, but because it did come up and he was able to get financing, but maybe didn't have the projection set in place, it would have prevented those bad decisions that you're now feeling 20, 30 years down the road after making that decision.
Exactly. And that's one of the big points here too, that we talked about on the call, was just having it's a massive wake up call for everybody, this situation, because the decisions that we make today, guys, it doesn't matter if you own a farm operation or not. Anybody in business, anybody in life, the decisions that you make today will have either long-term consequences or long-term like good results happen from them. And when I say long-term, I'm talking 10, 20, 30, 40 years down the road. But the thing is a lot of us, we don't think in that perspective. We don't have that perspective when we're making these decisions. It's just like that loan that you're talking about, Andy. When his dad bought ground 2-3 years ago, it's hard for us in the moment of buying the ground. We're like, yeah, we want this. Like this year, the ground's never going to come up again. It lines up directly next to everybody. Everything else we got going on, it's right next to our operation. Like this is perfect. It's never going to come up again. Right? That's the common story that everybody tells themselves, not recognizing that yes, this year it's going to feel great to buy that ground, but not recognizing that they're making a 20 or 30 year decision there, because that's how long they're going to have the loan payments.
100%.
And it's just kind of mind blowing here. You think about the amount of these decisions, guys, that are happening across the US on a day-to-day basis from thousands of farmers. that are making it solely based off of emotion, a 20-year decision based off of emotion. And it's easy for us to, I don't know, you kind of share your thoughts on this, Andy, but it seems like it's pretty easy for us to make the decision today, understanding that there are going to be consequences way down the line, but we're still okay with making it because it's going to feel good today.
That's exactly what I was going to hone in on, is you guys are operating throughout the day as it feels in the moment, right? Mm-hmm. Not looking at what this could do a couple years from now. Yeah, prices look good this year. We had a good crop that you're going to cut. Great. This works for this year, but is it going to work 2, 3, 4 years down the road? Like, do you ask yourself those hard questions? Yep. Because if you don't, and look at that situation as it could present itself 4 or 5 years down the road, that's when those problems start to have that compounding effect. And as we've talked about, like, there is no small mistakes in farming. Yeah, I experienced the exact same thing. One mistake you make this year, that can have a compounding effect 2, 3 years down the road that will inevitably could put you out of business.
Yeah. Cause I mean, you make a mistake today, could cost you 50 grand. Well, now we have to think about the opportunity cost of losing that 50 grand. And yes, it's going to hurt today, but it also is going to compound into the next several years down the road as well.
And it's not to force yourself to, don't make any moves, don't make any decisions. It's based off of the facts, though, because the numbers do not lie.
Yeah. And the thing is, that's all, what we do in Legacy Farmer, man, is having farmer metrics there so that we can actually, when our members are getting ready to make a big decision, whether financially or even family, guys, we have something to go back to make sure that they're making a decision based off of data and not emotion. And they like having the network and the group calls to come to on a weekly basis to get feedback on this, and not just from Jace or Andy, but from the entire network. Like the amount of the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years of combined experience in our network. Like, people underestimate how valuable that is, especially for a 30-year-old coming back to the operation, married, 2 kids at home, trying to take all this over. To have that as a resource, it's hard to put value. It's hard to put a number on that, right? Or just how valuable that really is.
And it's taken time. Like he said this member's name, like in 3 years, you'd be 33. Think of the trajectory now you put yourself in by fixing these problems. Like, this situation, it's not too late. Like, it's time, but you need the tools, you need the resources to make these changes happen and put yourself in the position of power to take the necessary actions.
Yep, exactly. And just to make sure you're making business-minded, logical, data-driven decisions on everything that you're doing. And once that changes, once you start doing that, Andy, we talk a lot about, what we're trying to do here. And guys, with the tools and systems and everything that we're helping our members with, and then the community as well, the habits that we're helping our members build, they're habits that are going to serve them not for just this year or while they're in Legacy Farmer, but we're literally instilling long-term habits that are going to serve them over the rest of their careers, and make sure that, 40 years from now, maybe Legacy Farmer still exists then, maybe it doesn't. I don't know. But 40 years from now, I want them thinking back to, if they're faced with a decision or a challenge, I want them thinking back to, 1, farmer metrics and making sure they're making data-driven decisions based on the numbers. But 2, maybe it's a call. Maybe it's a call of remembering, like, hey, Jay talked about this. I remember the call. It was 2021. We went over, he was in the same situation with his dad, and now I'm facing the same decision. Like, I want them to remember that because it's going to serve them long-term. Right. Andy, do you think people undervalue how valuable that really is?
100%. Because think about this, guys. Like, not only are you instilling that in yourself, but think about your kids, the things that you are going to teach. Not only that, you can teach those principles into your next generation, like preventing them from making the same mistakes that the generation before you did. Like, we're course correcting here. And think about the long-term trajectory that can be in place when you instill those mindsets and skill sets, the business minded, not focusing on the emotions of it and what feels good in the moment, but also what business minded decisions and mindset you need to have to project a successful future.
Yeah. And you talked a little bit about course correcting, and like with this member, guys, it's like trying to course correct a ship like the Titanic headed towards an iceberg. Right. They couldn't just turn the thing just on a dime. It takes time. Like, if you've been going down one path for a long time and you've picked up speed, it is going to take some time to course correct that. And that's why inside of Legacy Farmer, like, our members get to work. Like, we're not coming in here saying, oh my God, you're going to get magical results in a week or even a year. Like, what we're having, we've been going on the same path for 10, 20, 30 years. And now we're trying to course correct and make a change. That's going to take a little time to get us even angled. But each percentage point that we get turned is a percentage point gained in the right direction.
But guys, think about if you have the tools, the resources, those who are blazing that path as well, who want that path. Yeah. You can't force somebody into making a changes. They have to want those changes for themselves. But again, you take those daily actions and coming in and doing the work, studying the content and having that boardroom of others to follow. Like, think of where you're going to be at. And we keep telling the members where you're going to be at, like months from now, years from now. These are decisions you are changing and old habits that you're changing that are going to have long-term positive effects. The key is positive effects.
Couldn't agree more. And I think too, people just need to have perspective on, again, the consequences of the decisions that they're making today. Right. And like this, this member in their situation, if he did not have this group and he didn't have this network and the tools and systems and trainings that we're providing him now, 30 years from now, what's he going to be passing on to his kids? The same thing, the exact same problem and shit show that his dad has unfortunately passed on to him.
Here's the thing I want to point out, which is all of you, myself included, struggled with on the farm. You feel the pressure. Like you feel the pressure that you're in right now. Who are you going to turn to? Mm-hmm. This member was getting very uncomfortable sitting in the office because he was faced with the reality of the numbers. Where do you think else he wanted to go? He wanted to be outside in the feed truck.
Yep.
Checking cattle, checking the crops.
Building the vision, right? Seeing it come together.
It's but it's also an escape.
It's also an escape. That is so, absolutely true.
Me checking crops, 5, 6 o'clock in the afternoon after a day where you just like all the pressure is coming onto you and you can go out and see the crops. Yes, it's enjoyable, but also when you use it, like I did, as an escape to not face the reality, that's when that's a problem.
Yeah.
Like that's when that's a problem. So,
and you guys, you think about all the big problems that a lot of family farmers are facing today. A high percentage of them are because of the numbers and not paying attention to the numbers 10, 20, 30 years ago. And doing that every single year and just avoiding them have all compounded into the shit show of problems that we have today. It's not just family problems. It's more numbers problems. That's like with this member getting his butt back in the office, becoming a student of the numbers, recognizing that, yes, going out checking cattle and checking crops is fun and it makes me feel good, but it doesn't build a long-term sustainable business. Like that is not where my time needs to be spent.
You can't avoid this stuff, my friends. It does not work.
You really can't.
I've tried it. It does not work.
You really can't. So
the longer you put it off, the worse it gets.
The more painful it's going to get.
The more painful.
Right. It feels good today, but man, it's going to hurt like hell when I have to face this in 5 or 10 years. And the thing is too, guys, and this is where it gets pretty crappy is, some members, they've been put in a position where their parents, they passed on the operation knowing that it was riddled with problems and challenges and saying, hey, this is your problem now. And they took the easy way out. We're not doing that in Legacy Farmer. Our members are going to have systems in place. Our members are going to know their numbers. Our members' kids are going to know the numbers and have systems and processes in place to build something that's sustainable, that is going to last.
I could not agree more with that statement. That's exactly what is happening inside of here. Exactly.
Yeah. So, my friends, I hope you found today's message valuable. At the end of the day, the one thing I want you to take away from this, and the one thing I took away from this morning's call, is the decisions and actions that I take today. Look at it through a lens of how it's going to impact multiple generations down the line, not just your kids, but like literally your grandkids, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 generations down the line. Because that when you do that, it's going to change your perspective on how you are making decisions, and it's going to put more weight on them and make you really think through them instead of just pulling the trigger on a $500,000 land purchase because it feels good today and the bank said yes today, rather than really thinking through this thing and how it's going to play out over the next 10, 20 years. So, all right, my friends, Andy, thanks again for joining me today, man. These are good conversations, man. I enjoy it. So that's all we got for you today, my friends. Hope you found value in today's episode, and we will catch you on the next one.